Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. I hope I might just take the opportunity very briefly, Ceann Comhairle, on my own behalf and on behalf of our party, to congratulate President Obama on his success in the US presidential elections. He's been a good friend to Ireland, and the United States have been a good friend to Ireland. We wish him and the United States every success in what will be a very challenging environment over the next number of years, and also pay tribute to Governor Romney for a very competitive campaign, which I think had many people riveted over the last number of weeks. On the domestic front, Taoiseach, I want to raise an issue that I raised with you some weeks ago in relation to the savage cuts in home help hours. And in particular, Taoiseach, I would say to you that the rhetoric that has been used in this House bears no relationship to the reality on the ground in terms of the impact of these cuts. And I met thousands of people last Saturday, where people from all over Munster were marching in Cork, and got first-hand accounts from people whose elderly relatives have had their home help hours cut. And I recall what you said to me, Taoiseach, some weeks ago. You said that the overall position is that anyone with an assessed need for a home help service will not be left without one. Taoiseach, that is not the reality. I met a young woman on Saturday who detailed the case of her elderly disabled mother. And she said, "Well, it was difficult for us to try and manage before the cuts. It is impossible now with these cruel measures. I see no alternative," she says, "but to look into placing my mother into long-term care, which I'm sure would cost the state dearly compared to caring for her at home." Her GP have written to the HSE, and this is where you suggested there would be medical assessment. This is what her GP has said. "While I can appreciate cost-saving measures needed to be addressed by the HSE, I feel it is inhumane to deny a disabled elderly person the fundamental right to live in their own home with dignity." And he went on to say that, "I find the whole issue of cutting back on home help hours for vulnerable patients extremely upsetting and unjustifiable, and it makes no economic sense." And I have a range of other cases, Taoiseach, and I'm sure every TD in the House have had people who have come to them in terms of detailed cases, in terms of elderly people who've had their hours cut in full. Absolutely, the service fully stopped. Two elderly sisters, for example, nearly blind, who've had their hours fully stopped, Taoiseach. Now, what I want to say to Taoiseach is, I think the situation is untenable. I think it's unfair. And I think the manner in which these cuts have come about, as the campaign for Older and Bolder and others have said, have been without notice in many cases. The impact has been colossal and potentially dangerous. That's the words of Age Action Ireland. Potentially dangerous, and the impact has been colossal. Well, I want to ask you, Taoiseach, would you accept that these cuts fly in the face of repeated commitments in the programme for government that you gave, and will you consider reversing those cuts to the families concerned?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Every time you raise an issue about matters to do with the elderly or the disabled, these are always an immediate emotional contact. And it's true that it's a very difficult area to make any kind of adjustment in without individual circumstances or difficulties arising. I understand that. I meet them myself, and I've had occasion to have queries about individual cases that have been raised where particular circumstances apply, either in the circumstance of the individual or in the change of service being provided to them. Now, in the service plan for 2012, that was to deliver 10.7 million home help hours to 50,000 people. The reviews that have been carried out here, Deputy Martin, are carried out in such a way that anybody who is a current recipient of a service and who has an assessed need for a service is not going to be left without a service. Now, I've had cases myself of where people, whether it be a medical service where they might have to be washed and bathed and changed in the morning, which is obviously both personal and sensitive for a spouse or a family member, may not be trained in order to do that kind of work for an elderly person. And there are different sorts of assistance, as you know, given through the various measures by the HSE, be it respite care, be it home care packages, be it home help, be it the Meals on Wheels service or whatever. In the Cork area, for instance, the HSE South has provided in excess of 1.2 million home help hours to over 6,100 clients. And the current activity level in Cork, in your own county, is delivering approximately over 82,000 hours per month over the plan that was already agreed for 2012. And the Cork City team and the Cork City management of professional staff are working that be realised in a measured and in an appropriate manner. So it's not a case of simply having a blanket reversal here. It is a case of making an adjustment which is not without difficulty for some people. But for those who need and who have an assessed medical need, the HSE have been instructed by the Minister that these be treated obviously sensitively and in the nature of the case. Now, we can all come up with individual cases that will stray outside that boundary. You asked me here to reverse all of these. That's not possible. But what has to be done is that the management teams, the professional teams who deal with this, and I met some of the service providers myself when in Cork recently, have to do so in a measured and a sensitive fashion, that those who need the service will continue to get a service.
Thank you. Deputy Martin, thank you.
The reality is...
Sorry, Deputy Martin, please.
Thank you, Count Corley. Taoiseach, you promised increased funding for
Deputy
home care
Martin,
packages,
please, thanks.
and you promised increased home help hours. That's what you actually promised. But that promise is clearly broken. But apart from that, you're saying a medically assessed need. Now, I've spoken to people, and I actually told people what you told me here in the House 6 weeks ago, that people with such an assessed need would not be cut, that there would be sensitivity and so on. And they just laughed at me. And they said, are you for real, or is the Taoiseach for real? This is not what is happening on the ground. People are being left without a service, Taoiseach, who clearly need it. We have a case of two sisters here, 184, 193, one wheelchair bound, both nearly blind. They had 5 hours originally, which clearly meant there was an assessed need. That was reduced to 2 hours, and now it's fully stopped. Fully stopped. So people's services who had a clear medical need, who had home help hours, their service is being fully stopped, Taoiseach. Now, I want you, Taoiseach, to move from the rhetoric of the House, because people outside there, the families' concerns, are looking in and saying there is no relationship between the language used here and the rhetoric used here to the reality on the ground for many families across the country. Now, I think, Taoiseach, we owe it to the people outside to at least go beyond the kind of set-piece replies that will come up from HSE or from the departments or from the Minister concerned. And we need to really interrogate what actually is happening on the ground in terms of people concerned. I mean, the original case I identified to you, Taoiseach, is a horrendous case. A disabled elderly woman in West Cork, whose daughter has been extremely active and helpful in terms of supporting her mother, but who now find that she is at the end of her tether in terms of being in a position to keep her mother at home. And the GP has written to the HSE confirming this and saying something has to give here.
Thank you.
And the overall logic of this, Taoiseach, is that if we force elderly people from their homes into institutions and into nursing homes and community nursing units, we will be costing the state far more than is the case at the moment if we can maintain the home help service. You're proposing 8 million as we speak, additional cuts. That is reversible, Taoiseach, and it is within your capacity to turn that around and to reverse those cuts.
Taoiseach.
Well, I invite you, Deputy Martin, to send me the details of the particular case you mentioned in West Cork. Yes.
Sorry, hold on a minute.
Because see, I don't know the details. I don't know the details of the provider who's providing the service in that case. I don't know the family circumstances or the extended family circumstances. Yes, well, I invite you to send them to me until we see, because I'm not standing up. Yes. Yeah, we know all of that, we know all of that. You mentioned a specific case which you say is horrendous. As far as I'm concerned, the elderly woman in West Cork who's disabled, who needs medical attention, should get it, even in the assessment that is carried out by the professional teams of the HSE. There have been 2 reviews carried out already this year, and in each case all these circumstances can vary from house to house, from person to person, or from family circumstances to family circumstances. Is that person receiving home care assistance outside the home help service? What other elements of health provision for that person are being received? I don't know. I invite you to send me those details. As far as I'm concerned, having spoken to the Minister for Health about this, having spoken to the HSE, in the assessment of needs that are carried out by professional people in providing this service, where there's a medical assessment required, where there's a medical need required, that person is not going to be left without a service.
Thank you.
So yes, all you want is to say, reverse all these things. In this case, that woman is living in West Cork this morning. If she needs medical assistance through some form or other of this scheme, then that's the assessment to be given to her. And in the assessment of home help hours, Deputy Martin, it may well be, is the provider calling to that house in the morning to get that person up, get that person washed and bathed and dressed and ready for the day? Is that the service that's being provided?
Thank you.
Is that the service that's being provided? If you know all the details, I invite you to send them to me, and we will check that case with the HSE, and you can return to it next week.